Welcome to the Coordination Conversation with Jordan and Skala Engineers, where over 70 years of consulting engineering expertise becomes an easy conversation. Before we begin, we want to thank some of our partners. Carrier, inspiring confidence since 1902, when Willis Carrier's invention of modern air conditioning brilliantly solved a unique customer challenge, fundamentally changing the world and the ways people live in it. Carrying on Willis's tradition of innovation, Carrier is creating the future of indoor environments today. And Addison HVAC, delivering custom, high-performance systems built for your space, whether you're cooling a data center, classroom, office, hotel, or hospital. From precise humidity control to energy efficiency, Addison has your air covered, so you can breathe easy and get back to doing what you do best. Our ability to design better is shaped by fantastic industry partners like Addison HVAC and Carrier, and we truly thank them. Now, let's start the conversation.
Thank you for joining our show today. I'm Ken DeGuillaume with Jordan Skala Engineers, one of the principals based out of Houston, Texas. I'm joined here today with Sam Weaver. We're here to talk about some of the MEP disruptors and what we've seen in the past couple of years. Sam, one of the big issues that's been plaguing the industry over the past couple of years is A2L and these A2L transitions. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen.
So it's been a big issue in the industry ever since the EPA released their mandate that we all transition to lower global warming potential refrigerants in October 2023. The industry wasn't really prepared for it from a code perspective and a manufacturing perspective, and we've seen a lot of challenges trying to navigate that.
You know, it's interesting you said a lot of challenges coming from the industry, even on the manufacturing side. Some of our reps were not even ready for the change in this A2L transition.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it was middle of 2024 before we could even design around the equipment, before the cut sheets were available. And even now, we're just now being able to design around it for VRF because it has a slower timeline in the transition.
And speaking of VRFs, we know the transition took place with DX split systems, and lots of different jurisdictions were able to work through that, utilizing some of the different ASHRAE methods, and we were able to get over the hump through that. Mm-hmm. But right now, with the new administration, what are you seeing with the VRFs, and how's that impacting that change with VRFs?
So there was a recent amendment to the EPA's ruling in December of 2024 that extended the timeline for the transition specifically for VRF. So under the new rules, if you have if you have a project that was permitted prior to the October 5th, 2023 date when the EPA adopted all these rules, then you can install VRF equipment that was manufactured before January of 26 all the way until January 1, 2028. But if you weren't permitted before then, your cutoff is January 1, 2027. So, you know, it kind of gives you a little advantage to those earlier permitted projects, but I'm not sure how beneficial it is since most of those projects should be wrapped up anyway.
So I agree with you. And it's interesting because I actually have a project in Houston right now. We designed it in the VRF systems, permitted, and now with this administration change and this kind of limbo area that we're dealing with, it's becoming an issue. Do we move forward with the A2L, or do you take the chance and moving forward with the R410A system? Are you seeing some of the same issues on your side?
Yeah, and it kind of harkens back to some of the challenges we had with the split system, the DX split systems, when they were transitioning last year. You know, what's the project schedule look like? Right. Can they get the equipment ordered by the end of this year to meet that January 1, 2026 manufacturing cutoff? If they can, then it's a risk. Can they get them installed by the time, depending on when it was permitted, January 1, 2027 or 2028?
And that becomes a bigger issue because I'm seeing some of the contractors and general contractors talk about the install date versus the purchase date or the fully completed installation date? What is it really?
So as far as the EPA is concerned, it's a fully installed system, and that means that you have the indoor unit, you have the outdoor unit, you have the refrigerant piping between them, and a fully charged system. So that's their definition, and in order to comply with that definition, it also means it needs to be powered, because you can't charge a system without power.
Right. It's all good stuff to know, and that really impacts the general contractor and the owner to make that decision on how to move forward. Now, with that said, in the international code versus the uniform code, are you seeing differences there?
There are some differences. Under the international code, it kind of moves a little bit further away from ASHRAE 15, whereas the uniform code is a little more closely tied to ASHRAE 15. But I think you've run into some challenges under the uniform code.
You're correct, and we cannot design or approach design similarly like you would do in the international. For instance, in Houston, under the uniform code, similar with Austin, under the uniform mechanical code, the idea of shafts is really not a requirement. And so what cities such as Houston is allowing the use of ASHRAE, right, to where we could use that voided space, get the 1.5-inch clearance, and we don't have to worry about this concept of having the rated shafts and work through that, unlike what you're seeing, because that's a big challenge that the ownership have to deal with that net rentable loss.
It is. And we have seen, and it varies widely based on the jurisdiction, but we have seen some jurisdictions be okay with substituting ASHRAE 15 for Chapter 11 of the IMC. And then we've been rejected in other jurisdictions, and we've had to put in the shafts.
Right. You know, we work with one developer on multiple different areas utilizing that ASHRAE method, and I think more jurisdictions are becoming knowledgeable with that concept and allowing that trade-off, in essence, for ASHRAE, which actually helps the projects, one, move forward, two, you don't lose that net rentable. And so I think Jordan Skala taking the step and moving that forward and really set meetings to help educate some of the jurisdictions have been a win for the developers.
Yeah, and just as an example of that, you know, we had a project in the DC area where it was permitted under the 2015 code, so it was an older job, but the 2015 code doesn't allow A2Ls. So we submitted a code modification to use A2Ls, but we were going to do shafts per the latest Virginia code, because this one's in Virginia. We sent that in, and then 6 months went by. We didn't hear from the county, and we finally touched base with them, and they're like, well, we're getting more receptive to the idea of using ASHRAE 15 to eliminate the shafts. So we're like, okay, well, we'll redesign, we'll eliminate the shafts, and we'll send them a new code modification. And they sat on that one for a few months. And then one day, the chief building official called me up and was like, you know, I'm open to the idea of eliminating the shafts, but I can't do it under ASHRAE 15 because it throws in too many wrenches in the works for how we enforce the code. So can you submit it using the proposed changes to the 2027 IMC and use that as your argument? And that one did get approved, finally, after about a year.
But you were persistent on it. That's amazing. You know, one last case study on this A2L, and then we can move on to a different topic. But I tell you, we work really hard on a project that I think our Dallas office is currently working on. We met with, it was City of Fort Worth, met with them, had multiple conversations, worked them through all the nuances between the differences of the international code versus ASHRAE, and probably took us maybe a month. And after that, they really understood, took all those pointers, and now it's going to be one of their white sheet
that's really
within
great.
Their amendments to allow that use versus a shaft.
Okay, so they're actually publishing a white paper to guide people on how to do this.
They are, and what you realize throughout that whole kind of situation is education and understanding the difference and the nuances of what A2L means, what ASHRAE is asking versus what the International Mechanical Code is asking. And through those differences, you can really point out, okay, if you substitute here, you really are gaining, in essence, the same thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say education, because we have had projects where we've had to have a lot of discussions with the code officials to educate them on what are the latest developments in the code. And, we've even gone to Board of Appeals hearings beyond the code officials, upon the code officials' recommendation that we do that, and explained it to them, and they agreed that, yeah, this does provide equivalent protection to the shafts.
Right. It's amazing when changes take place, and it's so impactful, but not a lot of information to make the transition take place. And now we're so far into these different changes, and there's still a little bit of limbo with the VRF. Hopefully that get worked out relatively quickly.
Yeah, but it's definitely been a challenge.
It has been. Talk to us about these new upcoming 2021 codes. What are you seeing, and how is it impacting either the energy code and different parts of the areas and different project types?
Yeah, we're seeing the 21 codes being adopted in a lot more jurisdictions. I think you've been dealing with them here in the Midwest a lot more than we have on the East Coast, but they're starting to hit the East Coast. And the energy code really is a challenge compared to the 2018 and prior energy codes.
Oh, and I agree with you. The idea of energy modeling just being utilized for just that purpose, right? Just the building efficiency. When you look at the 2021 codes and the energy code, it almost drives you to have an energy model as part of the basis of design. I mean, just doing that model in itself, you could eliminate the use of ERVs.
That's a big savings for an owner.
And again, it goes back to that education, because the code states this, but understanding that you can use, there's exceptions, and that's published, right? To allow that, I think the energy modeling, utilizing that model to save on the ERV, I mean, even utilizing the model on continuous exterior installation. I mean, big cost savings for ownerships if they allow that to take place.
So when you do an energy model, you have to offset the energy savings with something else. What have you been seeing as being used as that energy savings to offset it?
Yeah, good question. A lot of it tends to come from the efficiency of the mechanical systems, right?
Okay.
Increasing the efficiency tends to help a lot. A big portion of that model is on your windows, right?
Yeah.
Your windows, better windows create a better performing building. And then I think there's the trade-off with your lighting, right? Ensuring that you using higher efficient lighting fixtures. I mean, all that plays a role, but like you said, it's a trade-off.
Yeah.
And so different building types will operate a little bit better than some. But again, the energy model in that energy code, nowadays, you're not going to really, for a high-rise building, just doing a comp check is not necessarily going to get it done.
Right. Especially under the 21 code. It's if you were to take that comm check path to comply, you'd have to do the energy recovery for dwelling units, like you mentioned.
Exactly.
But beyond that, you also have to do the additional energy efficiency requirements. And that section of the code has been completely rewritten for the 21 version of the IECC, and it's become more of a point system.
Right.
So you have to pick all these different strategies, and it's not just an MEP solution, it's also an architectural solution. There's no one category that we can use to meet that. In the past, we'd say, okay, well, we're going to do a 10% efficiency improvement on lights, and that was it. We were done. Right. But now we have to use the points, and it varies based on the building type and where it is, the climate zone.
And we've also been telling our clients that the energy model itself, yes, it will get you through for the comp checks or the energy efficiency requirement of the project, but also there's so many different aspects of pursuing sustainability, pursuing tax credit, pursuing different cost savings that a particular city may offer, that model plays a big role to show that your building is more efficient, and therefore you could potentially qualify for different savings that maybe that power company offers, or whether it's solar, whether it's gas, whether electric, but it's all based on that energy model efficiency. So
all
it's
comes
more
back
than
to
just
that,
the
yeah.
MEP.
Yeah, no, totally agree. But yeah, if we were to follow the ASHRAE 90.1 approach to an energy model, are there different requirements there that you've been seeing, like any mandatory provisions that we've had to follow?
I mean, there are specific mandatory requirements that we follow, and it's hard to go outline all of them because they're different specific for different project size. But I will say our team, I mean, that's the beauty of it. We have a team that really can focus that effort on these particular energy models and how to achieve these different points.
And help navigate those mandatory provisions.
Not only just the provisions, but also navigate through any other sustainable options that a particular city or a particular power company may offer in terms of incentives.
Yeah, and those incentives can add up to a lot of money.
Real quick. Totally agree. Yep. You know, we talk about, the tariffs. It's a little bit of a fear right now with how these tariffs are going to impact our industry. Mm-hmm. I mean, I personally am seeing developers talk about it. How is it going to really impact? I think we got to wait and see. What are you hearing and seeing from other developers around?
So we have heard some developers that are like, well, we're not sure how it's going to affect. There's a lot of speculation. And it seems like every day the rules about the tariffs change, more get applied, some get taken away, negotiations get implied. Just this morning, there were implied that there were going to be more negotiations. So it's really hard to pin it down. But we are hearing that the cost of HVAC equipment and electrical gear is going to go up, partially because some of it's imported, and some of it just a lot of components are imported. So it's kind of too early to really tell the impact, but it does appear that it's going to drive prices up.
I agree with you. That same project I was discussing earlier, same thing. They're going to lock in that VRF system, but the client did ask, can you lock in the tariffs, or what's going to happen to the tariffs? How's that going to impact price? And the contractor said, I could lock you in for the VRFs, but I don't know what's going to happen there. and that is what everybody is experiencing right now. A lot of uncertainty, and just got to wait and see what that outcome looks like.
And unfortunately for a lot of owners, we see a lot of qualifications and exclusions come through that exclude the price of tariffs.
Right.
So it really could become anything.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I guess talk about construction administration and just different changes and how you really approaching that nowadays.
Well, it's changed a lot. I've been in the industry almost 20 years now, and when I started, you'd get a stack of paper submittals, 6 copies from the architect, and you'd have to review them and mark them up, and then you keep a copy for yourself and send them back. And then we've had these construction management programs available to us for quite a while now. Right. And so instead of everything getting funneled through the architect, it kind of gets shotgunned to the whole team. And, maybe you need to respond to it, maybe you don't. So depending on how it's set up, it can be confusing for us as MEPs. But, it's the flow of information is definitely accelerated, and the expected turnaround time on submittals and RFIs has reduced.
I agree. I mean, I remember just like you entering the MEP world, the amount of construction administration right now has increased tenfold. I mean, everything's an RFI, everything's submittal. I think there's a cost associated with that because it does impact time. Do you see that on the East Coast?
Yeah, we certainly do, and sometimes it's contractors genuinely asking a question. Sometimes it's contractors fishing for a change order, or at least that's the implication that it comes across. And we have some projects in some areas where the contractor just needs a lot more hand-holding than other areas, and that drives up the number of RFIs. And so the reasonable number of RFIs for a project has kind of changed, and it depends on what region you're in and how experienced the contracting community is.
And I agree, and I think the demand for delivery of projects being on time, just technical services associated with the construction industry itself and the process, I think, has taken a lot of time. So it is shortening in how much you actually going through and reading specifications to get some of that information that are now being requested through RFIs, which creates a bigger log of RFIs.
Yeah, and sometimes people will be like, "Well, this project had an unreasonable number of RFIs." Well, that's really subjective thing,
Right.
because it depends on the project type and like all those other variables, like the experience of the contractor and what the purpose of the RFIs is.
Yes. No, I agree. And I think what we've also seen is you could have the same general contractor, but maybe a different team.
Mm-hmm.
And these different teams can handle and better understand that construction process and reduce those RFIs.
I totally agree. Yeah,
And
we've seen that.
yeah. And, how do you manage that? I think what we see is contractors are starting to do what they call submittal parties.
Oh yes, yeah, I've been a part of those before.
And some do it better than others, but I will say, if a 2 to 3 day being in an office, being in a room, and going through those submittals, it does shorten up on the back end. And I've seen it work on a couple of projects. I don't know how I feel about it for every project, being stuck in a room for 2 to 3 days.
It's hard to get everybody's schedule to work together for that.
But it's happened. It's worked on some projects. Are you seeing some submittal parties and them being more of a frequent ask?
I haven't seen it since COVID.
Okay.
I saw it a lot pre-COVID.
Okay.
Have you been seeing them after COVID?
I just interviewed. I just interviewed for a project, and one of their requirements was submittal parties.
Okay.
And to me, that tells me, okay, they do take their submittals and that CA process pretty serious, but at the same time, they're trying to put all the stuff out early, figure out what needs to get changed, and run through that process. That means they're kind of streamlining that process, which I can see the benefit of it.
Do you see any downsides for an owner for a submittal party?
I guess the only downside I would say is you're getting a lot of stuff approved early, so owners never change their mind, right?
That never happens.
Never happens. So I think, to me, that could potentially be the downside, right? You've already have all these items approved. With the industry going and how logistics is becoming an issue, mm-hmm. Ordering of equipment becomes problematic. So I see the benefit to that in terms of doing it early, and now you could lock in and go ahead and make your equipment orders earlier. But, as owners do, they want to change light fixtures. They might want to change the plumbing fixtures. They may want to change certain items, and that can at times create a potential issue. At least that's how I see it. Now, have that happened? I don't know. But I can see that as being a potential negative to the submittal parties.
When you've been involved with those submittal parties, have you seen certain submittals excluded from them, like maybe ones that require more review or anything?
No, I can't say they've been excluded. I will say there's probably more time spent with that contractor and owner to really work through those details earlier. So again, I feel like just a lot of benefit to submittal parties. You just have to have it outlined, have the staff, both internally and then from the general contractor side. And like you said, gathering everybody in a room, I've seen it work. I've seen it work on a couple of projects, which was beneficial to where you're not getting, one submittal every 2 to 3 days, lasting about 6 months.
Yeah.
In a week, you've gone through the process. Now, you may have to come back another week to revisit some of the
Maybe
comments.
some of them will revise and resubmit
Exactly.
in the submittal party.
But let's just say anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, we've completed all the submittals on a project that lasts 18 to 24 months.
So if you had an owner that came to you ahead of time and said, we know we want to do a submittal party, how would that affect the fee that you would give them?
That's a great question. I think my fee would still essentially be the same outside of maybe having some sort of additional services for a resubmittal get together.
Okay.
All right, because I think initially we're going to review the submittals anyhow. I think the resubmittal and doing that party and having everybody back for another 2, 3, 4 days.
Yeah, blocking out that amount of time.
I agree. I think that would be a conversation I would want with ownership to understand. I mean, there's a time frame, there's a cost. Typically, we're doing that, and typical AIA contract is, you have it either 2 to 3 days for RFI and a week for submittals. Well, we're trying to do all that in 3, 4 days. So I think there is a cost there's a benefit to that conversation as it relates to cost and coming back. I do think I see the benefit, but I also would want them to understand what that means to us. I mean, there's some time and effort associated with that, right?
Yeah. And it is tough in this day of constant meetings,
right,
to block out that much time for ME and P.
No, I agree. Wow, we discussed a lot today.
We certainly have.
Yeah, I really appreciate you joining us, and hopefully you guys will come back and join us soon.
Well, thanks for having me.